Your hair is too long. Okay, let's continue with Shabbos. Okay, so let me just say, I didn't have a chance to look, but this one looks interesting here. When they're talking about malachas, when you're asking a Gentile to perform a malacha, so the first one is an unsolicited malacha. If a Gentile performed a malacha which was not required, but which was done for a Jew's benefit, one may not derive personal benefit from it. However, the work that was, if work was carried out for the sake of a Gentile, a Jew may derive benefit from it on Shabbos. For instance, for example, if he turns on a light for his own use, one is permitted to read with that light. This permission doesn't apply if the product of the Gentile's work is muktzah. An example is if he or she milks a cow, one may not drink the milk on Shabbos. Okay, that's when they say product or milk, maybe because milk is a product. That's a tangible product. And fixed tasks, let's just do this one. Fixed tasks. Before Shabbos, one is permitted to request a Gentile to perform a specific task in return for a fixed charge. For example, dry cleaning, car repair, shoe repair, even though he may choose to carry the work out on Shabbos. This is subject to the following conditions. A, one may not specifically request the malacha be done on Shabbos. B, work may not take place on the Jew's premises. And C, sufficient time must be allowed to provide the Gentile with the possibility of performing the work on a weekday. For example, if servicing a car normally takes 4 hours, the car must remain with the Gentile for at least 4 hours after Shabbos. Okay, and one more. We've got time for one more, another minute? Okay, after Shabbos. Okay, let's do that tomorrow. I don't want to go because there's something from the Sforno and from the Balaturim. We'll do that tomorrow. So
yeah, you know what? Sometimes when we do it like that, we're actually able to absorb more and contemplate. And
I thought that was relevant and
it was.
To us and pertinent. Okay, let me just put this back. Okay, you can put it. Okay.
It was. Okay, Gav, do you want to do the dedication today or rather tomorrow?
No, definitely not today.
Okay, all right, that's fine. So, all right, I'm going to tell you where we left off. We're on 53b4. We raced to it in order to get to the 54th daf, but unless we start off from the Mishnah's point, we're going to be lost. So, if an ox with its utensils fell into a pit and the utensils broke, the owner of the pit is liable for payment to damage to the animal, but is exempt from paying for damage to the utensils. The Gemara comments, our Mishnah is not in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda, for it was taught in a brisa. Rabbi Yehuda holds that the owner is liable for damage done to utensils in a pit. The Mishnah, however, reflects the opinion of the Tanaim who oppose this view. The Gemara seeks the scriptural source for each opinion. What is the rabbi's reason for exempting the owner of a boar for paying for damage to utensils? For scripture states, if one shall dig a pit and an ox or donkey shall fall into it, etc. So basically, the verse specifies an ox or a donkey. And what does it imply as a result? Is that he's liable for an ox, but not for a person, for a donkey, but not for utensils. So since the Torah could have written, and maybe guys, I could have used the term, and something shall fall into it, or be non-specific, then it would obviously be a generic term. If you said, and anything that fell into it, it would be a generic term to cover basically people and utensils as well, but it was quite specific, an ox or a donkey. And the rabbis understand this as coming to exclude things that are not similar to oxen and donkeys. So the thing of it is, you might say to yourself, which is a question I had, but I can't ask Rashi directly yet, and I don't want to rush it before 1:20, is the Gemara explains why it's not understood as excluding all species of animals besides from this. Meaning, what it probably, I wonder if it had just said the scriptural verse, and an animal shall be fallen. Does that make sense? As opposed to an ox or donkey. So we're going to see why it's using those exact terms, but why it doesn't exclude other animals at the same time. We're going to go through that. Now, but the thing of it is animals are similar to oxen and donkeys, whereas a person is a sentient being. He's obviously the highest level of creation. And then he's not put in the categories of an animal. Even though he's got a physiology similar, he's got certain elements that make him godlike, the ability to learn from the history of others. In other words, conceptual lateral thinking. You know, an animal, if it touches an electric fence, will shock itself and learn in history not to touch an electric fence, but it's not going to learn from the history of other animals and read it and take an abstract thought and understand what the tangible reality is. Nor will an animal be able to, and at the moment, AI, for example, has got one major problem, is it can read a line saying, I will be self-destructed in 30 seconds and have no emotional connection to its destruction in any way. So there's no emotional cognizance of it either. As far as utensils are concerned, well, utensils are not living things. So how does Rav Yehuda deduce this? Well, he maintains that the word or, as in an ox or a donkey, comes to include utensils for compensation. Okay, because the what could have been written, for example, you could have had the word shor, v'chamor, an ox and a donkey. The fact that it wrote the word or is an inclusive term other than joining two words together. And that's why I said it includes utensils of compensation. But the rabbis don't maintain that. They basically say the word or is needed to separate an ox from a donkey. What do we mean to separate an ox from a donkey? It's to teach that there's liability that's incurred if either one fell into a pit. Because if I say to you the term add and the, it's inclusive, meaning that both of those items would have to fall in before there would be liability. Does that make sense? So in other words, if I have an insurance policy and I had to say to you, Kevin, in order for us to pay out an insurance claim, there's certain, I heard an interesting story. A friend of mine claimed from one of these insurance companies in South Africa that do a lot of advertising on TV. I don't want to get sued, so I'm not going to mention it. And they said, we're not paying out because you never did a wheel alignment and check before the accident. He said, I happened to have it done on Thursday, funny enough. And they were really irritated with him that he happened to have had it done before the accident. So you always have to be careful in South Africa before you pay the cheapest premium. And they had clauses like wheel alignment and balancing. In other words, if you didn't do both of those things, you wouldn't be covered. So the "the" or the "and" term is inclusive, that if only one of the criteria were met, it wouldn't count. So if we use the term or here, the rabbis are saying it's to teach that you're liable as the owner if either one fell in, not if both fell in. You don't have to have both to fall in order to pay the owner. So they say that that word is necessary. Now, Rav Yehuda maintains that separating an ox from a donkey is derived from the expression "and shall fall," which is a singular form and implies that the owner is liable even if one of the animal falls in. Does that make sense? In other words, if you use it in a plural form, it's inclusive of both. The very fact you're using the statement in the singular can mean either one or the other. It's actually both. Does that make sense? It's inclusive of both. Or it's exclusive of both, meaning either or. In other words, we will pay if both those animals fell in our pit simultaneously, or if either of those animals fell in our pit, because of the singular word shall fall. Okay, now, where do we see this again? So it uses the term, it's funny, the Hebrew term, Gavin, this is interesting, v'nafal, fall is fall, v'nafal shall fall, and v'naflo is the plural form. But it's amazing that the English word and the Hebrew word are similar. It's quite fascinating. What, Kev?
Now, floor means he will fall. Oh, it's like, it's usually he.
No, I'm with you, what I'm saying is if you look at the word fall or fall, the letters are similar in, I'm not talking about the pronoun. And you, by the way, you are right, because it's the singular, not they shall fall, he shall fall.
Pei lamed, FL. Yeah.
Correct. But you're proving you're proving the point of Rav Yehuda. You said if it's using the singular form, we can cover for the singular falling. It doesn't use the word vanaflo. Vanaflu, the plural.
Naflu, that's a flu. Yes.
Yeah, sorry.
Yes, fall. Yes.
So basically, Rav Yehuda says we automatically understand that the owner bears liability, even if a singular animal falls in the pool. So if it had written shor v'chamor, we would have known that means an ox or a donkey, because you could use the word or instead of the. Not and a donkey. Accordingly, the explicit or is superfluous. Okay, so what do the rabbis have to say to that? Is the rabbis say, look, the expression and shall fall may imply that even many animals fall. Because like in the Chumash, it occasionally uses the singular form when referring to two subjects. So in other words, even if it's referring to a singular form, there are cases which I'm going to share with you on the screenshot, which refer to a plurality. So you can't necessarily deduce it from there. So therefore, the Torah needed to write a separate or to separate an ox or a donkey. And this word can't be expounded as coming to include utensils. So let me just share my screen and show you what I mean. Okay, give me a sec, guys. I'm sorry about this. Okay, give me 1 second, guys. Okay. Okay. All right, so the first thing, in the first book of Samuel, okay, chapter 17, verse 34, David replied to Saul. Gavin, just read it.
Okay, David replied to Saul, your servant has been tending his father's sheep, and if a lion or a bear came and carried off an animal from the flock.
Yes, stop there. So that the Gemara is saying the singular form is used. Okay, I mean, you're the expert on Hebrew. The singular form is used. Are you with me? It's using
of what word?
It's saying that the lion and the bear came. It's using the singular form. Okay, there's a commentary on Rashi and the Ramban. My Hebrew isn't that good, and that's the source of it, because it uses the word uva, singular, speaking through two subjects. Okay, and you uva aryeh ve'et adov. So the uva is the singular term, right? Yeah. So you're the expert. I'm not going to cross you on this.
Maybe Arthur's is more the expert. Yeah, uva is like born, come, but ba is come in the past.
Yeah. Now let's look at this.
Yeah.
Let's look at the second example. In Shmot, Exodus chapter 36 in the first verse. Carry on reading, Gav.
Thanks for throwing me in the deep end here with these two words coming up. And Bazalel and Oholiab shall work, and every wise-hearted man in whom the Lord hath put wisdom and understanding to know how to work all the work for the service of the sanctuary according to all that the Lord hath commanded.
Exactly. So the word Bezalel and Oholiab. Okay, if you look at that, okay, that's a singular form. We have the same concept there. That's your second.
Bezalel.
I just said that.
No, you said Bezalel. Bezalel.
Okay, but the English is, where's it set? It's
Bezalel. Bet Sadi, and there's a underneath it.
Okay, so it's okay, Kev, yeah, but you get the point. You get the point that it's a singular, Gav.
And two singular people.
No, what it's saying is the terms used here is it's bringing two people and using the singular term. Okay. Now, in terms of the singular term that it's using, it uses the word va'asa instead of the plural va'asu. Do you see that, Kev?
Va'asa, where's va'asa?
It says
The
va'asa.
second one.
Yes, it says va'asa batzalel v'haliyev.
It should be or sim. Asa is singular for did or worked, or asa is for one person. Yeah,
Yeah, but
he
that's
worked.
what.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes, so
Instead of for two of them, you're right. Yeah,
I'm saying va'asa is the singular, and the plural is asu. So it's using the singular for two people. Okay, so the rabbis are bringing this up as your second example. Let me share your third example. Okay, now, if you look here, saying, "Let us follow and worship another, whom you have not experienced, even if the sign or portent that he named to you comes true." Sign or portent means signs and wonders. You know when it said Hashem took us out of the land of Egypt with signs and wonders? That's what the word portent means. It's wonder. It's like signs and wonders. That's what it means. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Kev, the English.
yes.
If you're using the word signs and wonders, so that's in Deuteronomy chapter 13, verse 3. It uses the single uva, okay, when speaking about two things. Uva, yeah.
Who is again? Because who is and like the yes.
Correct, but they're saying it's using the singular.
Trying to see where the word signs. Sign is usually siman or okay, no problem. Doesn't matter.
Yeah. Uva. The Gemara is saying that
ot is a sign, like a letter.
Yeah, correct. But let's not get bogged down by what the other words mean. All it's trying to do is bring the point. The rabbis are just trying to bring the point that is why they can't follow Rav Yehuda on this, because they're saying that you actually need the word or, an ox or a donkey, to say if either one fell in, because otherwise, just because they use the singular word, because Rav Yehuda is basically saying the singular word teaches me in this phrase that either one could fall in and you're covered. Both don't have to fall in order for you to pay out. Does that make sense? That's what Rav Yehuda is saying. The rabbis are saying, well, that's not sufficient, because these are three examples where a singular word is used to cover two things that have been discussed. So therefore, that's not coming to say that you're covered if each had to fall in. You're only covered if both have to fall in. Does that make sense? That's a sort of insurance. And the only way to separate them is you need the word an ox or a donkey. And that what teaches you're liable for each if either one fell in. So that's why they're saying that the rabbis don't include the word utensils, because Rav Yehuda is saying that the word or, an ox or a donkey, or is coming to include something else, and that is utensils. And the rabbi said the words are not free, because a plurality can be expressed as a singular in these three examples. So you would need that or to express it as a separate entity. In other words, it's not free to include utensils. You need it to show either the ox or the donkey. Does everybody understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Kev, give it over to me, please.
Okay, so the word or, aleph vav, or is or in English also. Yeah, the way I did go over it. It's just difficult to
No
try.
problem.
Okay.
I'm relaxed. All I'm saying is I want to. Maybe
okay,
I should
so
ask you.
Are you saying?
Continue.
It's that only if both of them or either of them fall into the pit, then there's liability for damages. Is that what you said?
No. I want to know how the rabbis hold and Rav Yehuda holds, and what the evidence is for both, and why they don't agree with each other. And it's open to anybody.
Gavin will know it.
No,
I don't
I
know.
know
No, you
Kevin
do.
has a feeling, but Kev, the reason why I wanted you to do it is I just want to see if we're on the same page, you and me.
It's very common. To you say it, it sounds great. When you, it's not so easy to give over. And I went over this and was very.
No
I went
problem.
over it more than once, and it's not a simple concept. With the, you have either ox or a donkey, or I mean a donkey and a shore. The common letter is or, chamor and shore. So the word or it refers to either of them. So either of them have to fall in, and there'll be. It's not going to distinguish only a donkey or an ox. Or can be either. So then there'll be a liability for, because I think it says further on, if any animal falls in, there's liability. If it dies or gets injured, there's liability. Whereas if a human falls in death, there's no liability for death. Am I right? Yeah, but it's not referring to this question.
No, but I'm happy to hear you. I'm happy to hear where you're coming
Is
from.
that correct? That's what that. But maybe so it covers any animal, like particularly donkeys and ox and shore and chamor, by saying the word or, and not. It's more general than specific.
Okay, we're going to get to the humanetic principles, and it's in Kedushin in the 21st daf, which we're going to get to, and I'm going to show you the evidence of that. There's the discussion by Rav Yehuda Nasi and the discussion by Rabbi Yossi, and they explain the humanetic principles. Before we get there, Gavin, put it over. You try, take a stab at the simple answer.
Wrong time to get me to do this. Trust me.
No, you'll do it, Gavin. You can do it.
I'm not my best. I'm not in my best state. The only thing I can say on this that I can remember is really that so this comes up in programming, funny enough as well. This and or. That's all you'll end up doing. You'll end up writing if functions and nested ifs and all of that type of stuff. And it's all based on whether it's inclusive or non-inclusive and what the dependencies are. So what's happened over here, if they would have put and in, it would have actually made no sense, because then you could have excluded yourself to just those two animals falling in simultaneously, or one had to fall in and then later on another one, first the ox had to fall in. But only once you've got the sum total of the two of them together in that pit can you then actually, are you then liable? So what they did was they extended, the rabbi said that they extended it to cover. So the or was needed there. Firstly, I think the or was also there for two other reasons. And I did this on Saturday as well, and I'm going to go to this yesterday. But it ends up covering all animals ultimately, exactly what Kevin was saying afterwards.
No, I get that. You're both correct. There's no argument. That's why I said Kevin's right. I've got no argument with that. What I'm asking you specifically, what have we learned so far? Because what we're going to do, guys, is we're building step upon step. So I'm happy that I can see Kevin's done Chazorah, and I can see he knows the way forward. What I'm asking is a very simple first foundational principle before we build on the second. Can you articulate that back to me?
No, just basically, I can just say basically what you said now, which is that that you got to sorry, I'm on a good state. What were we talking about? Just
well, the rabbi's opinions and Rav Yehuda and why they disagree with each other and their proofs.
Okay, so the rabbi's proofs were ultimately so Rabbi Yehuda's proof was the or. So he's saying or means to include other items as well. So he jumped into the bandwagon of the or. The rabbi said that the or is not free to be utilized for anything other than to separate between those two. Is to show those two types of animals. Otherwise, you would have presumed both going in at the same time, what I said earlier. And then what else?
But you haven't explained, I know you know, but you haven't.
So Rabbi's proof is basically showing that they keep using singular, not pronouns, verbs probably. They use singular verbs, even though they describe like two items. They go down into the singular, which then proves something. You were saying it earlier. I didn't quite grasp it 100%.
Okay.
I can't remember exactly.
Okay,
to be honest,
no, that's fine. You're on the right track. Can I just simplify it in a few sentences? And I'm happy to end early because I don't want to go through the humanetic principles today because it's going to get quite complicated. Arthur's feeling terrible. Kevin's had a long day of teaching, and you, Gavin,
I didn't know you would have the shirt. Jesus, I had a lesson. Luckily, I saw the link. Jeez.
Yeah, no, we did. No, but when we on WhatsApp yesterday, we did mention it on the WhatsApp group. But you got busy and you've forgotten. It's normal. It's not a problem. So let me just.
I'm happy. I'm part of it.
No, I'm happy. So I'm saying I don't have to take it to the 40 minutes. I just want to clear up one or two things quickly. I know you both understand, and Arthur probably.
I'll make it as simple as possible if you
but
can.
I just want to put it over as simple as possible so that you can explain it to anybody. Because if I'm an idiot and I can work it out.
No, you're not, Damon. That's what I did.
So look, the bottom line is it's all about having the freedom of having this word or, as Gavin said, and as you alluded to Kevin as well.
Can I add something quite interesting? I remember this. So what happens is that oh gosh, I'm blank again. All right, carry on, David. Sorry, this is the problem. Okay, carry on. I do know this is one part I know very well, but anyway, carry on.
Okay, so look, all right, just give me a minute, Gavin, and I'm free to give you the floor anytime you need. Look, in the scriptural verse, it says, if one shall dig a pit and an ox or a donkey shall fall into it. Okay, so obviously the term ox or donkey has a specific reason. I mean, obviously, as Gavin says it and Kevin mentioned, it comes to include other animals, but we'll learn that later. But the reason why I didn't just say, and basically anything shall fall into it, is because it's not that broad. I mean, it's broader than just an ox or donkey to include other animals, but not that broad to include people and utensils, okay? Now, the issue is that Rav Yehuda says it does include utensils because he's using the word an ox or a donkey. And he's saying that or is coming to allude to something else, and that is included in utensils. We'll get to why he specifically mentions utensils, but the issue that we have at hand is that basically he says that word is free. The rabbis basically say, no, it's not free. And you need to do it in order to separate the word the ox or the donkey, because you can infer from the statement that just like my friend that nearly never got paid out unless he did his wheel alignment and balancing for the insurance, either one of them not done means they wouldn't have paid out the claim. So if it doesn't use the word or, it's implying that both an ox and a donkey would have to fall in order for you to be able to make a claim. And the word or means either would have to fall in. Now, I would say to Gavin, I agree with him that it seems logical, but one would still have to have a source for that logic, because we learned that scripture supersedes logic. Whatever said in scripture, even if it's counterintuitive, we have to go with it first. Okay? So Rav Yehuda says that, look, you don't have to separate an ox from a donkey with the word or. The word shall fall is obvious, because the word shall fall is actually in the singular form. Okay, and where's that in the singular form? Well, it's got the term v'nafal. As Kevin quite rightly said, the singular form of and shall fall, or he shall fall, as Kevin said. Naflu is the plural form. Because it says the singular form, Rav Yehuda said that denotes that if one of those animals fell in on its own, you have to cover that loss. Okay, so that's his proof. And the rabbis are saying that that's not a proof at all, because there are times that there is a singular form that's used in a word, an expression in a pasuk, and what it means is more than one item. And the three examples I showed you. So what were those three examples, guys? It's Betzalel and Al-Liav. That was in Shmot. And it uses the single word va'asa instead of va'asu. Okay? And even though it's referring to two separate men. Okay? And then the signs and wonders come about. That's in Deuteronomy chapter 13, verse 3, using the singular uva, in speaking of two things. As Kevin said, that's also singular. In other words, and also if we looked at in the source in the first book of Samuel, chapter 17, verse 34, where Rashi brings that the lion and the bear came, uva va'aryeh ve'et adov. Okay, it uses uva, the singular term, even though it's speaking of two subjects. So then basically the singular word and shall fall, the rabbi said that's not a proof. And this is the reason it's not a proof. That's the argument in a nutshell. That's it.
Yeah. And there was, I remember now, so there was also those two, why specifically mention oxen and donkey is because oxen was more of a workhorse. And, you know, a tougher animal that would go out there and do the plowing and stuff like that, whereby they didn't want you to leave out donkeys that weren't the hardcore animals, you know, they were what's more like carrying like a livestock. So,
where did you read that? Because the Gemara brought two completely different reasons. The Gemara brought the reason, number one, of an ox being an animal you could consecrate. That showed you one example. And the donkey that, as far as the Bechor firstborn, it's one of the only non-kosher animals that you can dedicate, even though you can't technically sacrifice it. You'd either have to kill it or switch it for a goat. But the point of it is that two different categories of animal. It wasn't about heavier work and lighter work, but I'm sure you have a source, and I'm happy to read it, get it together for me.
No, I thought it was on the same place where you just mentioned your stuff now. I what you mentioned now, I read. That's what I read. So I thought it was one of the notes there, but I stand to correction.
No, I'm. If you've got one of the notes, I'm happy to hear it. Happy.
Well, it's based on what you were saying now as well, but just stuff for that.
So the homeonetic principles are a little complicated. We're going to go through in Kedushin what it includes and what it excludes. In the meantime, you and Kevin were both on the right track. I just wanted to articulate it in a clear few sentences what the bottom line was, so we can build the next step.